Hour with me, Angela Doyle Stewart, and the fabulous Karen Whelan Imrie. This is the space where we dive into real conversations about growth, healing, and living with intention. Today, we're exploring a topic that often gets overlooked but is at the heart of self love, which we've recently covered. Boundaries. Boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They are about protecting your peace, honoring your needs, and creating the space for healthy connections. When we set boundaries, we're not just saying no to others, we're saying yes to ourselves. And why the learning to set them is one of the most powerful ways we can show up for ourselves. So, Karen, honey, what does boundaries mean to you and how can we implement them?
I liked that what you just said there in the way that you said it. And what I heard is that like boundaries aren't walls, they're love in action. And I think that's a nice place to kind of start with. For me, I never understood boundaries. It took me a long time to understand the importance of boundaries because boundaries, it's not something visible. It's not that we can see this grid around us that we know not to go beyond a certain like terrain with ourselves. Like, so because of the way I grew up, and I want to keep this kind of light as well, but I want to give it context to bring understanding. I had no sense of a boundary because the carer in my life didn't respect my boundary, and they were able to, we'll say, trespass into my personal space, and they were able to do onto me and utilize me in an objectified way. So as a result of that, I had no sense of how to keep myself safe, how to keep my emotional self safe, my mental self safe, and my physical self safe. I had no idea what a healthy boundary looked like because I was only ever exposed to unhealthy boundaries. And one of the most kind of places that I can really remember the truth of that sticks out for me was in work when I was being bullied. Now the version that I am today, which you just named, which is, self-love gives us the invisible energy of boundaries. So the more we love ourselves and the more we care about ourselves, the more that we can assert what is okay for us. So years ago in work when I was being bullied, I couldn't even assert myself in that space. I couldn't take care of Karen. I remember being so worried about how they were going to treat me on the mornings when I would go in. So I would stop and buy coffees and buy like croissants. So I would go in with that people pleasing energy. And that was my coping mechanism in the world. That was once I knew people around me felt okay with me, I could relax into my spaces. So in my place of work where I was for 12 years, I would go in and a new person had onboarded in the company. And once her and my colleague of 12 years formed an alliance, there was an attack then onto me, and it was done in such a strategic way that it was only done in office. And if anyone else came in, they would change how they behaved around me. So nobody got to witness what was being done onto me. And in that space, with them doing what they wanted in their bullying, and I call it what it was pure bullying of me. And it was horrific. It was horrific. And I endured it for months. I'd say close to a year and a half. Um, it affected how I showed up in the space. It made me uncomfortable. It stressed me out. It overwhelmed me. I couldn't sleep at night because the next morning I didn't know what attitude I was going to face when I went in there. And I was, as I said, I would buy coffee, I would buy croissants, I would do my best. I would do my absolute best to please my colleague and to appease the other colleague when she would come in. And no matter what it was that I did, it didn't change how they treated me. And I just did not know back then what to do to keep myself safe or how to survive in that environment. So when you ask me that question, that would be my earliest true kind of honesty around boundaries and a lack of boundaries and not knowing what boundaries were, how to protect myself in spaces and not having boundaries to keep me safe. That would be my honest articulation there with boundaries. Yeah.
And Can I ask, because I'd imagine a lot of people have experienced some form of bullying in their own lives, whether it be in work or in connections or relationships or just in passing, and unfortunately it does happen.
Mm.
What would have been the turning point for you that you were no longer going to accept that? Because you obviously left that position.
What happened was, so when you're being bullied, for me anyway, what happened was I had a real fear that nobody would believe me. That was my fear because of how I was being treated by these people and the way it was being done. I had no evidence to prove what was happening to me. Um, so I truly didn't think anyone would believe me. And then the turning point came in a serene kind of serendipity, wonderment moment when we had work laptops. So we ran an educational training program for people who were homeless or in early recovery with their addictions. And I loved the job. It was a very meaningful job. So one of the modules we would work with, there were life skills we would give our service users. And one of them was how to work with computers. So we would have a work laptop and we would take the client into just a private room and work with them one-on-one. And I remember setting up for my class with one of my participants, and before they came along, I'm logging in, getting the laptop ready, and a notification pops up on the laptop and it says you have one new message. And it was a Facebook notification. Now, in work, you're not allowed to log on to social media, or use the laptops for personal use. So I was like, oh, and we did teach our participants how to use Facebook. So I was like, oh my gosh, is this one of the participants' Facebook account? So I clicked the notification with the intention to genuinely log off. But when I hit the notification, it actually opened up into what the notification was coming from, which was a Facebook Messenger, the Messenger chat. And it was actually my colleague. And what it was a recent message that she had sent out to the other colleague about me, and the other colleague was now responding. So when I looked up through the messages, there were all of these really, really like stomach punching, heart clenching messages about me. And I had only recently published my memoir, my first book. So it was all about my childhood abuse, and it was blaming me, the victim of abuse, for being abused. It was horrible. Like, oh, let's have a work night out and let's not invite her. I hope she finds another fucking job. It was actually very painful in the moment to read it. So what I did was I reached into my handbag to pick up my phone and to get my phone to take screenshots. And there was a book in my handbag at the time. And I looked in to get my phone, and there was this book with the title, More Truth Will Set You Free. Sure, the irony of that. And I remember that hit me, really hit me in its wisdom. And I took out my phone and I screenshotted the messages. But then my guilt kicked in of, am I in the wrong? Have I like done something wrong that I'm accessing someone else's account? So with that, I panicked and I absolutely closed down everything and I left. What I did with that, again, which is the people pleaser, is a few days later, I was on holiday and I sent my colleague a note saying, with some of the messages that I screenshot, not all of them. And I said to her, look, I came upon these. I didn't disclose how I did, but I came upon these. And, your treatment of me over the last number of months has been unfair. So I know that you and the other colleague have been speaking about me, and I would like for us to move forward. And that's what I offered her, for us to move forward. And that's all I left it as. But I didn't hear from her. She read the message and I didn't hear from her. And I came back from the holiday and I was like, what do I do? What am I going to face? So I went in, I knocked two doors up from me was my CEO of the company. Again, boundaries. And I knocked on her door, not knowing how to address this, but she knew about it. And she said, all I can say to you is go and speak to your line manager in the morning. So I drove out to my line manager and I said to him, I'm here to talk about the messages. And he was like, yes, we know about that. So already he was in his own psyche, he already had a narrative about what had happened. And he was already, after forming an alliance, with my colleague. So he said to me, he said, you've hacked into someone else's private messages. You've gotten access to someone's private messages, he said, and you've brought this into the place of work where it doesn't belong. And we cannot get involved because this is between you and her at a personal level. And I just went, whoa, hang on a moment. I'm actually coming to you to ask you to come. And then he said, sorry, but you can go into work this morning and you can have a conversation with her. So I was like, hang on a minute. I've just come to you. Those messages were carried out during work hours. They were found on a work computer. This is very work related. And you're telling me it's not, but you're telling me to go into my place of work and have a conversation with her. So again, there is an example of blurred lines and boundaries not being healthy, and people, when we have agendas and alliances with other people, how can be bad for other people. So I had to go in that morning. He wouldn't come with me, and I kept saying to him, so you're not going to take care and responsibility for me. You're allowing me to go into a building and be exposed to have a very sensitive conversation, and you're not going to mediate that. And he was like, no, because it's got nothing to do with us. So I was shocked. Anyway, I went into
Wow.
work that morning and she just launched at me, how dare you? I want these fucking messages back. I'll get the guards involved. You've hacked my account. It was so much being thrown onto me. And I left work that morning and I rang the CEO and I was just bawling in my car saying, I've just been like verbally attacked in my place of work. My line manager wouldn't facilitate it. And she turned around and said, and I said to her, I have to go home. I can't be here. I don't feel safe in my place of work. And she
Mm.
said, if you don't return back to work, I will come down heavy on you.
Wow.
That was her response to what had happened to me, which then led me to take a case against my company as well. And yes, I got an independent investigator to invest, and they found in favor of me because of the evidence. Um, and you know, my company had aligned with her. So again, when we don't have boundaries in place, and when we're not, for me, when we're not a healthy human being and we haven't worked on ourselves internally, we can't also access healthy boundaries within ourselves. So therefore, our environments that we're in, and if we're in a position like that where we're a CEO, a manager, a senior colleague, when we don't work on ourselves, then of course our boundaries that we put into that environment, if it's a work environment, aren't going to be stable. They're not going to be minding and nurturing and protective of what needs to be protective. And it will lead to the downfall and the mental health downfall, because that's what happened to me, Angela. I ended up becoming very, very sick. I ended up getting my gallbladder removed, gallstones from the stress in the gallbladder, and my mental health totally collapsed. I could not sleep solidly, like for about 4 months. I kept getting terrible heart pains, even though it wasn't my physical heart, but that was the symptom of this heaviness on my chest and like severe pains in the heart. And like I remember even lying in the bed, like crying with Fia beside me, and she was 12 at the time, and just looking at her and going, oh my God, God, if you're actually taking me out, I mean, please do so when she's not in the bed with me. I don't want her waking up. God, I'm so emotional about that. I didn't even expect this to be the conversation on boundaries.
It's a very emotional story, Karen, what you've been through, and I was aware of some of that, but not all of it. As I'm listening to you, I find it very emotional to think that you had to encounter that you went to all these people that should have been in a position to support you, that were in powerful positions, really, and
Sure.
that they didn't use that position in the right way. And that's why it was found in favor of you, and rightly so, but awful what you had to bear with. But then, as you say yourself, the endurance that you had to deal with afterwards. And then you're lying there with your beautiful daughter and minding her, and then, worrying about what that might,
Mhm.
end up like for you. I mean, that is hugely emotional, and as you said, you didn't do anything wrong. You were just unfortunately not minded and protected in that space. And it had such a knock on effect. And then other people are not able to hold that space the way they should, and to protect your well being, but also have proper boundaries in place. There was no proper boundaries in place there. I mean,
No,
you weren't
they
minded.
allowed me, I remember before the investigator came in, they made me stay in the same room as her. So it took them 70 days. And the only reason when they did move me, separate us, was because when I read, the grievances at work policy, they didn't even have one in existence. The CEO was only new and she was changing the policy. So there wasn't a current grievances at work and the procedure. So when she did give it to me, which was like a week later, when she gave it to me, I remember reading it and they said that I had a right to speak to what they called an independent person about my situation. So I asked, who's this independent person? And they said a meeting up for me with that independent person. And it was him who said, what do you mean you're still going into your job every day and you're sitting across from this person? Why have they not separated you? Why have they not taken care of you? So he went in and said, you're in breach of your own policy. This girl should not be even in the room until there has been an internal investigation carried out and the findings have been carried out. So then, in their anger, my line manager came up and moved her out, but gave her all the equipment, the printer, the phone. So if I needed anything, I had to go into the other room to ask her for it. And then I said, but what about our lunch? We share a community room. And they said to me, and I'm not exaggerating, they said, eat your lunch in the car. So for 11 weeks, I ate my lunch in the car because our lunchtime was at the same time as all the other workers in the building. And for me, I didn't want to sit at a table where she was at and all this energy of animosity. So, of course, me being me, not able to defend and articulate and like stand up for Karen, I did go out and eat my lunch in the car. Now, the Karen today, who would she be in that space today? Well, in that space today, I can tell you, number one, no person would ever be allowed to treat me in that manner again. And I remembered hearing that deeply one day, people will treat you based on how you let them. And that was a real wake up for me. Like, oh my God, people will treat me based on how I let them. So Karen today would not even like, the bullying was horrific. The outcome and the experience was exhausting. I have so much to anyone who even ends up listening to this who's going through anything like that. Like, number one, I'm so sorry. It is an awful experience, but I want you to hear that your role in this is to protect yourself at all costs and to seek out the best support that you can for yourself and allow yourself to be held and loved and minded through a very, very stressful, toxic, process because of other people's unresolved, unhealed attitudes in them that make them project onto you. So I just want to, anchor that in. The Karen today, what would I do? I would absolutely, the minute anybody begins to even project that and onto me, right now, if I was back there, I would look two of those colleagues in the eye and I would say to the two of them, are you fucking after losing your minds? Do you honestly think that you can do what you're doing right now? And you think I would tolerate that? Right. This is what is going to happen. If you don't change your attitudes right now, I'm going to go and I'm going to speak about what's just happening right now. I would act on it immediately. I wouldn't go home and sit with it and wonder, what am I doing in this situation? Because that's what it did to me. I was like, what am I doing wrong? Okay, maybe I'm not doing enough in work. Maybe I'm not giving enough, and I just kept on giving, which it was never even about me, but my poor lack of, boundary for my own self and knowing my worthiness, because I do believe the two are so interlinked. And maybe that's, a place where you can share from is, your sense of self agency and self worth connected with boundary. I had no self worth. So, absolutely, I was an easy energy, an easy target for people to pull out of because I'm naive, number one. I'm very kind hearted, number two. And back then, I didn't have much of a self worth. So I was the perfect energy to be picked apart. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's what happens as well, is that they can sense it. People can often sense when they can take advantage of other people's goodness. And it's a pity that they can't, connect with the goodness in others as opposed to try and damage that. But that's on them. And, the reality is, I'm sure you've changed a lot. You would have in that company as a result of taking them on and basically showing them what they've done wrong and what they didn't do right for you. And as a result, going forward, hopefully that meant the difference between somebody else's experience compared to yours. Not that you had to be that person, and you shouldn't have had to be that person to be the example of healing in that company or whatever may have come to it. But there would have been lessons there that should have been learned. Whether they were or not is another thing, but certainly should have. And when you talk about that, we talk about boundaries and the impact. For me, the learning would have been around bereavement, having to lose people to teach me how to stand up for myself. Because you talk about that nature, and you and I have connected on that because we have well, a lot of similarities when it comes to, our tendencies towards others. We are naturally kind people, and we want to be kind people. Like, I mean, I love connecting with other people, and I love being kind. It's a natural instinct for me, and that's why. And you're the very same. We're the type of people that want to do good for other people. It is part of us. It's not something that's fake. It's something that's real, because we sense that we are all the one. We're connected in so many ways. But it can be hard when other people haven't done the work. And I'm not saying that I'm some massively evolved being. I'm still doing massive amount of work within myself, as you know, because we talk about it. But a lot of my boundaries would have been skewed as well. And it would have taken, because I was such a people pleaser, it would have taken loss for me to stand up for myself. And a big part of that, when you talked about your experience in work, mine would not have been as horrific as that. I mean, that is absolutely horrific. And it, breaks my heart that you had to go through that, even though I knew some of it. I didn't know all of it. But I would have, when I was in my early 20s, I would have worked in a company. I would have been headhunted by this company at the time, and it would have been very glamorous, and it would have appeared very glamorous to me to go and work there. And ultimately, the company overall was good in many ways. But I didn't know at the time. I was very naive. I'd been very sheltered. I worked with before that, I worked with a leading TV network, and they would have really sheltered me in many ways and really minded me. And I loved my job there. And I absolutely had an amazing experience there. I couldn't fault anything about. I was really looked after. But I was also young, and when another company comes and it's shiny and new and is offering you a lot of shiny and new things, like more money, more everything in your own office, and all of this kind of, glamorous stuff that you think is glamorous at that age, I had no idea what I was walking into. And I remember going to work in this particular company and instantly feeling like I had made a mistake. And my old company, the TV station, had said we would take you back. But of course, being young, I'm like, I'm not going back, because that's me admitting failure. And that's me with my boundaries all over the place as well. But I stayed in the company, and what happened was there was a girl in the company who was 10 or 12 years older than me at the time, and was really good at her job, and was somebody that I would have kind of wanted to learn from. But instantly I got the idea that that wasn't going to happen, that but I also saw it wasn't collectively me, it was across the board. Many other people would have been impacted by this particular person and their personality, but I became a big target. And I remember going to the boss, the manager at the time, saying, I'm finding it really difficult to work with this person. And his answer was, don't mind her. And I said, but it's easy. I can't not mind this person. She's impacting me. I mean, there's stuff she's seen, there's emails, there's a lot of stuff that's been said. And I don't feel like I'm being minded in this space. And I think everybody's aware of it, and nobody's doing anything about it. And his answer was, she's just jealous. You're about 10 years younger than her. You're much better looking. Everybody thinks you're really attractive. You're really happy and smiley, and you're really lovely. And she just doesn't like that because she's not like you. And that's all it is. She's just jealous. And I went, okay, so I'm supposed to accept jealousy when there's actually I'm getting impacted by this. This person, you're right, is older than me, should know better. I would like to learn from this person, but they're not going to give me the opportunity. But I'm not going to tolerate somebody putting me down when there's no merit to that. But it was simple things. But that went on and on and on, and they brushed it underneath the carpet. I was so naive, and I put up with it. I was so naive, and I put up with it for months. And then my mother died. And when my mother died, that changed everything for me. In that moment, it was because she died from sudden death. So in that, like, it was completely unexpected. but it was like everything changed, and I realized what value meant, but also what I was willing to accept and not accept. And yeah, a few months later, I handed in my notice, and that was it. I met that person. Um, oh, it was really funny. About a year or two after, and they were super nice to me. They met me at a big event. I had VIP access to that event. They didn't. And in the role that we'd been in, this person would have treated me like I was less than, and that this person was a VIP. And it was really funny. We were at this event, and they wanted access into it. And I went, oh, actually, I forgot I have access. I've got my VIP access. Not that I cared about those things, but I was in my 20s, and I remember walking in, and her face kind of dropped, but I was sweet and nice. And I said, take care of yourself. That was it. But in the end, it was a lesson for me. It was the realization that I put up with it. I allowed it to happen for a long time as well. And then a few years after, when I worked in a different company where I witnessed somebody else being picked on, this lovely person. I was in a position of management in that place, and this person was being impacted by over someone that was above me, and she'd confided in me, and I knew she couldn't fight for herself, so I fought for her. And it was, I didn't, at this point, it didn't matter to me whether this person was a CEO or whatever their position was. I didn't care. You're dealing with humans, you're dealing with another person. This person needed my support, and it didn't matter to me what that meant for me, what that would do for my position. What mattered was, you know, I wasn't looked after when I went to my manager. They brushed it off. They put it down to girls being jealous of girls, this crack, and as if that would just be okay. And I believe there was a whole lot more than that involved in jealousy. But this incident taught me what was really important was looking after each other. And when this person confided in me, they weren't happy, and I took it on, and I did. It didn't go well at times against me, but I didn't care. At the end of the day, I mean, the way I see it, you're just another human, and I don't care what position you're in, whether you're cleaning my desk or whether you're running that company. I will treat you all the same. And to me, we are all human at the end of the day. It doesn't matter your role. The same way now, I am not intimidated by somebody in a position of power. They do not frighten me. The way I see it, we're all humans, and if we can't sit in a space with each other and respect each other, there's something very wrong. And I have to say, that person really valued what I did for her. And it's something we're still very close to this day as a result of that. And she needed to know that people had her back. And, that gave her confidence, because I didn't have that person didn't have my back when I was quite young. But when my mother died, it taught me and brought me into the space of myself and said, hold on here now. This is what's important. And your tolerance of things, it becomes less than. And I can't stand bullying. I just can't tolerate it, and I can't deal with it, and I won't have anyone disrespect me. I'd rather walk out of something than stay now in a position. And I'm lucky I'm in a great place that wouldn't tolerate that kind of stuff. I can say I am very fortunate, but that's why,
Mhm. Mhm.
I stay where I am right as well, because, when you're treated with respect, but you learn, and people are happier. But yeah, I do think boundaries are important. And each time I've lost somebody along the way, funnily enough, it has taught me how to have my boundaries. It's terrible. It's taken debt and a few people to die on me for me to each time learn how to mind those boundaries. So maybe you could tell me what that is, Karen, because I'm still trying to figure that out.
Um, no, there's a lot in what you said, that really touches into what awakens in me when I listen to you. Like, number one, how our no is genuinely sacred. It's very sacred, to have our no. You're also bringing up, the energy of power, and how power gets played out with people. And how, if I say no and I can hold my no, like what you said, like, no, this is not okay to be treated this way, despite, we'll say the senior person saying, look, she's only doing it because of, in other words, dismissing And that may not have been their intention, but okay, I'm not gonna hold that space of being kind about everyone's intention. He dismissed where you were coming from and what you were articulating, and you did a great job in articulating what you were experiencing. You were very clear in your articulation to me, listening to it, of what was happening, and you were very clear with what you were okay with. Unfortunately for him, he didn't honor that part in you. In other words, he didn't want this to become a problem. I don't want to have to deal with an issue or a problem. And that can happen in workplaces whereby the people above don't want to have to deal with things because it's too much effort and too much work. And yet it's their fucking responsibility to absolutely deal with it. This is why you're in the role that you're in. You're in that managerial role. You are the person who creates and influences the culture of the organization. And the culture of the organization for me is like the immune system of a body. If one entity in there is unhealthy, it has a domino effect. So the attitude even of the seniors in that workplace also feeds into the culture of an organization. For me, the beauty of now where I'm at with my sacred no, and not being afraid, and understanding the two energies, not being afraid of saying no to people now, and not being afraid of how I'm perceived by people, which is a great, oh, I can breathe. I don't have that fear of hurting your feelings, or making you uncomfortable, because I know discomfort in the body, I used to really, really hate noticing, because I would pick up on that, others being uncomfortable. So I would want to regulate the whole bloody world around me. Again, trespassing my own boundaries, compromising my own boundaries and my own needs to fulfill the needs in others. So I don't do that anymore. So my no is sacred. I now look at it as a gift. So if I'm unsettling to you because I'm saying no, and I am anchoring in my boundary, and I'm saying no, and that makes someone else uncomfortable, I now see that as a gift in value. Like you just said, my values changed, my tolerance changed. So there's the other gift as well in in teaching you about value and tolerance and worthiness. Because me saying no might be encountered by somebody else as, who does she think she is? You know, I don't think I'm an anybody, but I do think I'm a somebody worth respecting. And if nobody else, because this world has never respected me, and I've learned that this world and people in it have not respected me. But when I began to really, really respect Karen, when I really, really show up for Karen, I then set it up that others begin to respect me more, and they learn how to respect themselves in that exchange as well. Because I will never, ever, ever abuse anyone, but I will. And I have clients tell me this: you get mad with me. And I go, I get mad with you because I see what you're doing to yourself, and I know what is you're capable of. So when I'm mad with you, not in a motherly way, but I don't tolerate what they're doing, because I won't allow them to drop into lower vibrations in their behaviors, where they're trespassing and violating their own sacred energies and their boundaries. I become intolerant to that in them. And they're like, you get mad with me. And I'm like, yes, because I don't want you doing what you're doing, because you're more than that. I'm mirroring to you your worth, but you're encountering me as being a bit harsh or hard, because you were never valued in this way before, like I am valuing you. This is love in action. But because
Yeah.
we don't know love in a healthy way, we all know what it's like to not feel loved, to be rejected, to be punished, to be pushed upon. We know all of that frequencies of energies, the lower ones. So sometimes when a person comes along and offers the higher energies of abundance, of self-respect, of valuing, it can make people uncomfortable because they're not used to it. It can really make people uncomfortable, because all they've ever allowed themselves to receive was the lower energies. So I love when I'm in a place and somebody does get uncomfortable, when I'm like tolerating myself and respecting myself and saying to them, even sometimes at a dinner, if somebody's constantly on their phone, I will say, could you please put your phone down? Like, I'm sitting here with you. I'm giving you my time. Please respect that. That might sound like it's arrogant to someone on another table, but I'm not being arrogant. I am saying I am showing up in a space to give you all of me. And I can't tolerate it that you're sitting here with me and you're disconnected from me. So please, my boundaries and my relationships changed, similar to you because of loss, not death of a person, Angela, not to the level that you've had it, but loss of relationships also made me have to reevaluate and rediscover myself and my own tolerance and learn to not be so tolerant to the fucking intolerable, because I was always tolerant to the intolerable. Now in my relationship, and my husband will say that, I name it. I name it. If I'm sincerely unhappy or I felt something is not okay for me, I have no fear in naming that. I'm not there to please how he is and how he is experiencing me. I'm not the performer anymore. I'm not the puppet on the strings and they're the puppet master, because that's how I lived my life always. So the no is sacred. And I feel when we do mirror self respect and we hold a sacred boundary for ourselves, absolutely, for those who are only coming in or maybe working on their boundaries, it will feel like we are like jarring or we are a discomfort for them. Absolutely. Because we're not, there's a beautiful, I don't know where I saw it, and I'm not going to say it correctly, but, people will, get pissed off when we begin to change our boundaries because they no longer can control us.
Yeah,
We no longer have access to the who we were before we began to heal,
yeah.
and I like that because that's also a very, very sacred truth. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to say you have been a huge influence on me when it comes to boundaries, and our friendship, has been wonderful for me because for so long, that part of me that wants to make sure, like, if somebody texts me, and Stephen, my husband, would be the same. I would be like constantly getting back to people, I'll be like to the point of exhaustion that, and he'd be like, you don't have to answer people straight away, Angela. You can take your time. You don't have to deal with that right now. But that part of me would always like, oh no, 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 I owe my time to that person. I mean, that would be multiple people. So that's changed, but also how I might respond to somebody. And then I would say to you, gosh, Karen, I'm just wondering, what do you think? And you'd be like, you would always frame it for me in such a way over the years that we've been friends that it would allow me to actually look at things from a different perspective. My thing was never wanting to offend another person. Heaven forbid I should ever make somebody feel bad or, feel like I didn't give them all my time, to the point that I was so exhausted and I'd be ran into the ground for everybody else. And what I have learned, and I'm still learning, it's still, because I have to remind myself, because I'm still not very good at it. At times, I still jump into it. You say action, and that part of ourselves where we want to, be there for everybody and do for everyone, and to the point that we forget ourselves. I'm learning to do that. Like, I'll stop and think now, and I go, okay, does that feel right? Do I want to do that? Does that make me feel good? Who am I doing this for? Am I doing it for them or am I doing it for me? Who benefits the most here? And if it's to the point that other people that I love, like my husband and my kids and my closest friends, are missing out based on that interaction or me doing for everybody else, then I won't do it. And I'm actually starting to enjoy no. I'm really starting to love saying no. I can't believe it. The enjoyment. Oh my God, it's brilliant. And being able to say, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't think I'll go there. No, 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 no. But actually, to the point now, I have to try and do a little bit like of the other side too, recognizing which one is right, which one I say no to. So there is that part as well where I'm skewed a little bit when it comes to my boundaries. So it is a learning. And then sometimes I still jump into that people pleaser, and then it's too late to jump back out. As in, like, I can't just, actually, by the way, can I take back that? I don't want to do that, but it's too late. I've already signed up. So I have
Oh,
to, I'm trying to stop that part of myself. Like last year, when I was in the middle height of exams, work, college, and then I took on another big project. And then Stephen said to me, Angela, what are you doing? Because when I take on something, I can't do it by halves. I have to
mm,
see it through. I have to, I have to be almost militant about it to get everything. And I was so exhausted and I was so burnt out. And I just looked at him. I am never doing that again. Remind me when I tell you I'm about to take on loads of things, stop me, because I might not know how to stop myself. So sometimes I would say to people, when it comes to boundaries, sometimes you have to have someone to tell you as well. You need to stop
Yeah.
there. And I almost got pulled into the same thing this year. And I went, no, I recognized this straight away. And I said, I loved what I did that time, but I'm not doing it again. I won't disclose what that was, but it's more so me learning to say no to things and only saying yes to things that I want to do, like this podcast and stuff when we were starting out. Because I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this makes me feel good. This is good. This is different." So it's
Yeah.
about, isn't it? It's just kind of the realization of where boundaries, where you need to set them, but also where it's okay to go with the flow. And I'm learning that.
Yeah. And you're actually naming, which I think would be lovely for people, if we when we sit back and say, how do we know, that we are leaking our boundaries? And you're naming it there in the words that you're using. Because I mean, I've been speaking on it as well. So chronic people pleasing, that's definitely a sign when we're not secure in our boundaries. Okay. We've talked on burnout and resentment. Oh my God, and it still shows up in my relationship with my husband, because my love language is in action. So I love to be in service. I love to do and to give. I'm tactile. And I have to remind myself, not to put my way of being onto others, in other words, trying to control how it shows up in my world from them. In other words, I did that for you, you should do that for me. That's the resentment. No, he shouldn't do anything for me. I should be able to do it unconditionally without strings attached. Are you doing that for me now and you're going to bite my head later? Staying in situations when we know they're not okay. Yes, that happened to me, and I've learned that one in a big way. Feeling guilty when we say no.
That's why I had to check with you, sure. That's why I go, Karen, I'm after saying no or this, and you'd be great. You'd like reframe it completely, and then you'd free me of that. And that was the learning over the years. So I have to say, your insights all over the years, they all started to add up. And like it is the gift. It's the gift that keeps giving, I will say, because of all the decisions I've made lately in my life. And oh my God,
Yeah,
and not
yeah.
feeling guilty about it and not feeling hung up about it. And that's because you have supported me so much on those things.
And even though I support you,
Yeah.
like you're supporting me when you come to me with the things, because you're reminding me as well of, oh yeah, I went through that, so I knew that that helped me a bit. Maybe it'll be in service to you. So like it's a two-way exchange of energy. And I think feeling guilty for women and mothers in particular is a big one. The guilt when we become mothers in not giving in to the child is so big, you know, but that's where they learn about the boundary exchange as well. And I think maybe that's something to shine a little bit of a light on, that it's okay to say no. It's okay if they get hurt in hearing a no. Like it's actually okay. And all we're doing is we're guiding them to be able to say no in their own environments, and then be able to cope with somebody being disappointed in them if they do say no, because they learn to feel safe in their upset around us when we say no. I think that's such a big one as a mother. You're a mother to young ones still, Angela. Would you
Yeah.
see
And
that?
I totally agree with you. And I enjoy saying no when I have to, because I know they will get a benefit from it. Like for
Yeah.
example, you know, um, our youngest child we would have lost our puppy, and our neighbor as well, which is really, really sad. And that definitely impacted him for a while. So we worked through that. But as a result then, it meant that everywhere I went, he became my shadow, as you know. I mean, pure shadow. Still is kind of my shadow. So ultimately, my husband and I, we would have went away for 3 days or breaks like that, for birthdays or anniversaries or times together. And as a
Yeah.
result of, the impact on that, the change for, with our puppy and everything else, I had to, we took our time, we went with him with his needs first. That was the most important thing, my son's needs. But then it got to the stage where he was doing really well, and he is doing really well. but it meant that we also had to have time away. So the compromise for us was I wasn't going to go 2 or 3 nights. That wouldn't be happening right now. That's something that maybe next year we will go back to. We will go back to doing, absolutely, because it builds his resilience and he's with safe people. When we're away, he's with nanny and granddad, and they're the most amazing people, and we're very blessed. So what we do then, and this time I was like, no, we're going away for a night, and he was like, but I don't want you to go. So we broke it down and explained to him why it was important and why he would also be in really good hands. And he had the best time. Didn't come near me, didn't contact me, didn't want nanny and granddad to, but it was really good. It was saying no as well. I'm like, meeting him where he's at, but also having a bit of a balance. And that's what I'm learning. And my older son, he's like, when are you going away? You know, there's later nights, he's like, we have routines where, his phone comes out of the room every night, it's not allowed staying there, because even though he'll say, well, I won't be on it. And I'm like, nope, hand it over. So he says, oh, most of my friends, 14 and 15, they're allowed to keep their phones in the rooms. I said, I don't care what most of your friends are doing. I care about you. And, my love for you means I have to mind you. And that means I'm sorry, I do have to take your phone. I know you don't like it, but I'm going to take it anyway. So it is, and he knows that. So it is about protecting them with the boundaries at the same time and saying no. And it's really, you have to be really like Lucas, if he would like multiple treats, he'd love to go to press. I'm like, no, you can have a treat, but there's a limit to that as well. If I don't protect your health and well-being, who will? And I have to teach you to do the same. So it's a work. I don't
Yeah.
mind. I have no problem saying no when it's the benefit of my children, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Like once because I know it benefits them. And I have seen people around me that do not say no and, find it difficult to say no. And I kind of see the repercussions. I've seen the repercussions for that as well.
Yeah.
And that doesn't serve a child. You serve your children well by putting those boundaries in place. Boundaries are there to protect them and also to give them, as you said, skills going forward. And they're not going to hate you for saying your no. They're going to thank you for it. I mean, my son, if I didn't take his phone at nighttime, he would likely stay on it talking to his friends. He would be exhausted and he would be sleep deprived, and then his sports and his activities and everything would be impacted on his schooling. So he thanks me in his own way. He knows that I'm doing that for his benefit at the end of the day.
Yeah. Like we've really spoken about like the importance of boundaries and the responsibility for ourselves to really, really work on ourselves so we can cultivate healthy boundaries. I grew up in an environment where I didn't have healthy boundaries, and that just totally exposed me to continuing being reckless in my choices and in my decisions in my life. As I began to go out there more and more into the world, put me in situations where my decisions were, led me in kind of, very, very bad outcomes. So now I understand, like, even down to like, if I want a bath, but somebody wants me to go out and join them, go and even like go meet them in the cinema. Before I would have dropped what I needed for them. Now I choose me. Now I choose the bath because now I understand that I'm betraying myself and my boundaries. So to also frame it in another kind of beautiful way, so I'm not making it sound like it's just like this like practical, boundaries are practical rules, because we can't see it, we cannot see boundaries, but they do, as you said, they do keep someone safe and they protect them when they understand, they're right to their own boundary. Boundaries for me spiritually are also, if I think of it like a frequency, it's like, what are you allowing yourself energetically to be in alignment with, and now what I'm in alignment with in my life is so different. Like if I put it into the context of my work, I only recently put up, was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. Like we closed our door on our private practice in Wharton House. And I've been there for 11 years in my private practice physically, where I've sat in a room and that room has heard so many stories. It's witnessed a lot of tears and breakthroughs and transformations. And we're no longer doing that. Like our work today is, whereby our clients fly us over to work with them in containers, or they come here and we do immersion work with them here. So my business has transformed because my self-worth, my boundaries, the things I will say yes to and the things I say no to. So the things I align myself with have all transformed. So for me, boundaries spiritually is also, what am I sacredly saying and allowing myself to experience in this world around me? And I want to experience wonderment. So there's my value, is to value the energy of wonderment. So I position myself nowadays in a spaces and around people. Like even so much so that we had a wonderful client where we ended up working in Monaco with them. We attended like the Formula One. We're on like what they called the super yachts, owned by the guy who is the owner of the Bank of Monaco. And we're around other people then who are mirroring incredible boundaries. You know, people that you just won't walk up to and say whatever, because you can feel off of them that they've this authority in their presence. And so you're not just going to walk up and be whatever way. You walk up with a great respect and you show up with that attitude in you to meet them. So like it's an important energy. And I think metaphorically what comes to me, because it's up over my head, is a boundary for me is like a picture with a frame around it. It keeps the picture and what's inside contained, and it keeps what's out there out there. And we get to choose what we want to leave in here into
I
our
love that.
in our experience. Yeah, I'm looking at a picture up over my head. So that
I
just came.
love that. I love that description. I love it. Yeah. And it's true. And it is. And you become fussier as you get older as well. That part of you, what you're letting in, as we are very young still, to be quite clear on that. But you know what I mean? You do become, your awareness becomes so much stronger. And you're right. I mean, like, you were sending me all these videos and images and everything from your trip and your super yacht and everything else. And there you
Yeah.
were, just looking so beautiful. So you so belonged there, do you know? And I know there was billionaires and millionaires and everything all around you, but you were so comfortable, so at home there.
Yeah.
That wasn't you out of your depth. That was you well within yourself and well centered and grounded and boundaries, and they were all gravitating towards you because of how you are in the world, how you show up for yourself. And you show up amazing for yourself and people respond to that.
Yeah, and that's another thing, there is no idealization when you get to that place where you hold on to like valuing who you are, and your boundaries are, they stem from and they grow from that place, even on the out, like, I mean, I'm having a drink with the saxophone player from Pink Floyd, you know what I mean? These are the type of people, and yeah, if my self-worth was a little bit lower, I would have been like, what do I even say to this person? How do I be around this person? I'm not trying to be anything around anybody. I just move and enjoy being me. I mean, I was walking around Monaco at the end of the night with two multi billionaires, and I'm in orange fucking socks because my high heels were hurting me, and my husband had to give me his socks. And they were like, "You're probably the first person ever to walk around the streets of Monaco in socks." And I'm like, look, it takes a wonderful Irish person to not give a shit, basically, and they were laughing and they loved it, and they loved the realism, and they felt more, because there wasn't an energy of performance or pretense. They just dropped into great shares and wonderful conversations, and we're like, where are you going next? What are you doing tomorrow? It became more about that than anything else. And me and Jeff, we just love that, we have this in our life where life, like you, has brought in so much lessons and tests, and tore us inside out and upside down like a Rubik's cube. And we gathered ourselves back up, and we're in a place now where no is actually very sacred, and it's probably the true power I want to always have control over is my no,
Yeah.
and that comes from a deeper place, as well, as we know, that we'll go into some other time down the road on trauma. But my no now is very sacred to me. And it's very, it's how I keep myself very safe and protected in this world. So boundaries matter, guys. Truly, boundaries matter. If I could say anything, boundaries matter. And maybe just for listeners right now, maybe ask yourself, who are you leaking your energy to? Who Are you around that when they leave, you feel drained by them? You know, how do you feel when people cross over into your boundaries? I mean, your body, as you described it so brilliantly, Angela, like in your way of describing things, like your body knows, it knows, you know.
Yeah.
And even if you, you know, if you can't find, like, you know, never mind the intellect. Like I always say that, like if the body knows, trust in that, trust in the body. The mind can talk us out of things. Yeah.
Yeah. But even a text message you might get from somebody, if you kind of instantly go, oh, you
Yeah.
get that hit and you almost repel it or you don't want to open it and you still do it and you still reply to them, you still give in, you still do all that. Like that's, as Karen's saying, that's your body saying no here,
Yeah.
and trust that reaction. I had that reaction for so many times against, with one or two people in my life, lovely people. It's not that. But as you're talking about the drain and energy, and when the messages would come in, my anxiety would go up and I would still go and, meet their needs and look after their, them without and sacrifice myself. I don't do that anymore. I don't even engage with it. I don't even reply, no, actually they stopped messaging. It was great because I
Yeah.
started to show up for myself instead and, kind of protect my boundaries. And absolutely, the power in it when you discover it and when you can say no and detach lovingly from
Mhm.
that area, because that's what it is. It's being able to kind of go and let go, let
Yeah.
go. It's not serving you. And that's part of the boundary.
And what I've witnessed in you as a friend watching, you know, your growth with you, you know, and as you said, you know, we're always evolving. I'm always evolving, you know. Like I've noticed for you too, your bravery and your confidence has really taken on another quantum leap because you've began to really honor yourself, you know, and your nose. And like the thing that you were speaking to, because it's not my place to share it, but like, you know, I witnessed you knew it intuitively, but you honored the other. So you sat with it from their positioning, you sat with it from a loaded lens, and then you came back to your wisdom again and went, you know what, actually, this is not me. What I'm picking up on is absolutely correct. I'm not wrong in how I'm sensing myself. And there's something magical when we absolutely listen to that inner voice within us, whether we want to call it the soul whispering to us, the Holy Spirit, divine, whatever we want to call it. But when we absolutely listen to our inner self and it gets validated by us, but also by the situation, and it becomes validated, like we become unbreakable in our faith and our self trust of ourselves then. And all of a sudden, the world out there does not, there's nothing to fear in the world out there. When our boundaries are blurred and they're trespassed, and we trespass them as well because, you know, we're still trying to people please and we hate making people uncomfortable and we feel guilty, then the world out there feels overwhelming and it feels too much because our boundaries, you know, energetically, we're not contained, we're not grounded, we're not anchored into our selfhood, we're kind of fragmented, we're leaky, we're everywhere. So, of course, the world out there is too much because we're not gathered up in our container being in that world. But I've really watched you and I was so proud, like, you know, I had such joy in my heart when I listened to your voice note, you know, when you came back to what you knew originally, you know, you came back to it and you declared that for yourself and you were like, I actually was right in my knowing of this all along. But you honored it. You went into it. And I want to say that like the detailing you gave this situation was profound. I wouldn't have had that level of tolerance. I would have went, fuck them. But I'm only saying that now because I can, you know, but I was so proud of how respectful you were to the situation and the person, and you wanted to give it enough time. But then I was more proud when I witnessed you come home to Angela and go, you know what? I was actually right here. My interpretation of my wisdom picked up on something and it was absolutely correct in what I picked up on. And now, what's so powerful is, and this is what I want the listeners to really understand, when you get that for the first time with yourself, and that is confirmed to you, and that might be even, you know, you picked up on a friend might have been pissed off with you, but they won't name that they're pissed off, but you know it, and then you're brave enough and courageous enough to name the things that we always like to avoid naming, but you name it and it's confirmed. Now you will never betray yourself again. You will always know that that fucking vibration in you is vibrating correctly to you. And now you're able to navigate your world around you with less fear in your body. And I really, that's what I've been witnessing in you is your growth into like becoming more unafraid, more unshackled, more in alignment with Angela. And when we're in alignment, I've come to see that's when the real magic out there happens, because what's waiting for us and what's designed to be in our world that's in service to us shows up. It just shows up.
Yeah. I
Truly.
love how you describe everything, and that is so true. And I think people would get a lot from that. And you're dead right. I I would have felt very guilty, possibly even months ago or a year ago, making that decision. I would have turned
Yeah.
it on me. I would have made it an Angela problem. No, it couldn't be anybody else's issue, or it couldn't be anything outside of me. It had to be my fault, if it was something else. And really come to that realization and coming to that understanding without guilt, and actually going the other way, going, why did it take you so long? Why did you, how come it took you so long? But actually, don't turn that on you. You got there eventually. And I'm so proud of you. You did it, and you're dead right, because since I've realized those certain parts of myself that I have kind of recognized and trusted, as you said, it does change it when you start to actually realize and you recognize that vibration as you talked about, and you really feel into it and you trust it. It will show up in, you're showing up for yourself, and you're recognizing to be your own cheerleader, but also to trust yourself. Trust was a big thing for me, to trust myself. And by God, do I trust myself now more than ever. And I value that feeling in myself. And I'm not going to second guess myself. I'll always be open to other people, and I'll be open to, a conversation if something happens. I'm never going to shut things down completely. You know me, I'll always be very understanding, and that is part of who I am. But when
Mm,
it comes down to it, when it really comes down to it, I will always be my own cheerleader, and I will recognize, actually, hold on a minute, in this situation, you made the right decision. And I have no guilt on it. There's nothing, it doesn't even touch me now. It's like, woohoo, I'm so proud of you. You don't even feel it. Like, it doesn't even touch me. I completely like release that situation, and like let go. And of course, wish only, that person, connection, all of that, the best in the world. I don't wish anything other than that, blessings on anybody. And I genuinely wish blessings for all, but you know what? Just not to be in my energy, and not to be in my life, because my life right now, I choose who gets to be in it. I decide who's going to be in my life, and it'll only be people that will enrich me, make me feel good, and like sometimes tell me if I'm not good. I want honesty as well. I don't want people to sugarcoat my life either for me. I want honest relationships, and you're always honest with me, and that's why we're so close. Because we show up for each other. You'll tell me the truths, but it's different when it's not coming from a place of love, and that's where you recognize, who do you want in your life. It should come from a place of love, and we deserve love. And I will give that to somebody that honors me. I will honor them.
yeah. I love all of this, which is probably a beautiful way to close it in and close it out. I love what you said there. And for listeners, then, to really take away that boundaries aren't about being selfish. And probably this piece, which is what you've said, and I love that you said it, but without knowing that you said it, you've basically just really told our listeners and me, and a reminder that boundaries, if you wanted to metaphorize it in a beautiful, poetic way, that boundaries are a love letter to ourselves. You know, it's us telling ourselves in there that part of ourselves that maybe we were never told or we were never demonstrated fully, but we matter and we're enough and we're deserving and we are worthy of respect and to feel and know what love is. And we can gift that onto ourselves. So, boundaries is definitely, and we can look at it like that, it is a beautiful love letter to ourselves for sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that. Love that.
I
Beautiful
love that.
description.
Yeah.
Yay.
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 So, guys, thank you for joining us today. What a gorgeous conversation. And, again, we never know where these go. And the love and the trust that I have in the space with Angela, I did not know that story of my journey was, you know, of course it's in me, but I didn't know it was going to be the story that came into the space with us all today. So, you know, to everyone who listens to this, and again to my beautiful friend Angela, thank you all. And you know, pink is power, and so is your no.
Yes. Yay!